Global Multidão, realizing just transitions. Global Multidão, realizing just transitions. Welcome to the German Climate Pavilion at COP30 in Bealem.
Boa tarde a todos e todas. É um grande prazer estar aqui em Belém, no coração da Amazônia. Sejam muito bem-vindos e um bem-vindo especial também para quem nos acompanha online. A very warm welcome from VENRO, the Association of German Development and Humanitarian Aid NGOs, to the audience here in the room and online. I'm Martina Schaub. I'm a member of the executive board of VENRO, and I'm the executive director of Ouro Verde Tropical Forest Foundation. We are truly honored to co-host this event together with our partners ABONG from Brazil, CCRDA from Ethiopia, and VANI from India within our joint project Countdown 2030, Global Goals Need Civil Society. Here at COP30, in the heart of the Amazon, we stand at a crucial moment. The world must turn adaptation promises into real, concrete action. Needs are growing faster than the resources and decisions meant to meet them. Yet, across continents, women and indigenous peoples are already leading the way, developing adaptation practices and strategies and passing on knowledge that builds resilience. Their leadership reminds us that adaptation is local, inclusive, and just. But too often, these efforts lack recognition and access to finance they need. That's why civil society in Germany and worldwide is pushing for locally led, gender-just adaptation where power and resources move closer to the communities driving real change. And this is exactly what our Countdown 2030 partnership stands for, connecting voices from Brazil, Ethiopia, India, and Germany to make sure civil society helps shaping multilateral processes like this COP. We sincerely thank the BMZ, the Federal German Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, for supporting this project, this partnership, and making today's side event possible. And now it's my great pleasure to hand over to Henrique Frota from ABONG, who also will share his words of welcome on behalf of our Brazilian partners. Thank you. Muito obrigado.
Thank you so much. Welcome to Brazil, to COP30. My name is Henrique Frota. I'm one of the executive directors of ABONG, the Brazilian Association of NGOs. And as Martina said, we have this project together with other 3 national platforms of NGOs, connecting the America regions through Brazil, Europe through Germany and VENRO, India with VANI, and Ethiopia with CCRDA. So here in COP30 is the end of a journey of almost 2 years of work in which we had been together in the Summit of the Future in New York, in Addis Ababa, in New Delhi, also in Berlin, and in Spain during the Finance for Development conference. The idea of this project is putting together all those voices from our different countries, trying to have common positions and recommendations for the international arenas regarding sustainable development. So here, during COP30, the idea is to have all those actors and stakeholders from civil society from different countries acting together and producing also recommendations for the climate agenda. So for today, the debate that we are going to have about local communities, women leadership, indigenous leadership, is part of the agenda of work that we have in this project. So thank you so much for being here with us today. And I would like to hand over to Sophie, who will be the moderator of this session. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Henrique and Martina, for setting the scene and introducing our common project. My name is Sophie Knabner. I'm a policy advisor for climate and sustainability at VENRO, and I'm very happy to be facilitating our session today. And I'm happy to open our panel and welcome Tigist Endashaw, who is joining us online from Ethiopia. Who will be with us in 1 minute. Tigist is an international consultant supporting civil society and youth networks across Africa on equitable climate finance and inclusive adaptation governance. I'm happy to welcome Natascha Beinker, representing the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, the BMZ. Please come to the stage. Natascha is leading the climate policy division since this legislation term, but being with the BMZ for many years and has a strong background in development finance. We will come back to that. I'm happy to introduce Sheilla Dourado. She's a political advisor at Institute of Socioeconomic Studies in Brazil. And has deep experiences in researching and working with indigenous and traditional communities in the Amazon and Cerrado. And I'm especially happy to welcome Cleisimara Reis Gomez. Please come to the stage. Hello. Welcome, Cleisimara. Starting with you. Thank you for Sheilla okay. Thank you to Henrique for translating a little bit. Cleisimara, what are the climatic changes you're seeing in your region? And yeah, are your community able to adapt to them?
Alô, alô.
Oi. Oi.
Yes, it's working.
Boa tarde. Sou Cleisimara Reis Gomes. Sou indígena do povo Piratapuia, coordenadora do Departamento de Mulheres da Federação das Organizações Indígenas do Rio Negro, atual coordenadora. A FOIRN representa 750 comunidades indígenas que estão dentro de 3 municípios, São Gabriel da Cachoeira, Santa Isabel do Rio Negro e Barcelos. E temos 23 povos no Rio Negro e temos 17 línguas faladas dentro do nosso território. Então temos...
So, good afternoon. Her name is Cleisimara. She coordinates the Women's Secretariat of her organization, a federation of indigenous people from the Negro River here in the north part of Brazil, especially in the state of Amazonas. Their federation, they have about 750 communities in 3 municipalities in Amazonas, speaking about 17 different languages in the region.
Então, a gente tem um território imenso, né, extensão geográfica. Para a gente é muito difícil a gente ter esse monitoramento. E a gente tem 9 terras demarcadas e a gente ainda tem terras para ser demarcadas.
So, it's a huge territory that those communities are. It's a challenge to monitor the situation of all the communities, and they have until now 9 lands that are already recognized publicly, but they have other communities that are asking for recognition to have their land recognized by the government and protected by the government.
em relação ao enfrentamento à crise climática tem nos afetado bastante, principalmente nós mulheres que temos esses desafios dentro do território, né, principalmente a seca e a cheia. Tanto a seca, né, vem também secar os nossos rios, nossos igarapés, e também a cheia vem inundar os nossos plantios e a gente acaba tendo perdas de variedades de plantas.
So in terms of climate change, all the communities are affected, but especially women are affected in their communities, both because of heavy rains and floods. And when they have floods, they have losses in their agriculture, they have losses of the plants that they are planting, but also because of the periods without rain. So the droughts and all the rivers are without water, etc. So they are suffering both situations.
Apesar de a gente ser povos que preservam a natureza, que preservam o meio ambiente, nós também estamos sendo afetados totalmente pela mudança climática, a ponto de a gente perder, né, espécies do nosso sistema agrícola, como espécies de manivas, espécies de plantas que são plantadas na roça, no nosso plantio, e também variedades de manivas que é a nossa sustentabilidade do nosso dia a dia, é também do qual a gente retira nosso complemento de geração de renda e tem nos afetado bastante, tanto a cheia quanto a seca.
So, as she said, although they are not provoking climate change, actually they are preserving nature, but they are most affected because of climate change. One important impact is that they are losing the species of plants, especially maniva or manioca, which is the basis of their food and which also brings economic losses to the community.
E acaba também afetando a nossa segurança alimentar, porque é daí que a gente tira, né, o nosso sustento diário, para que a gente possa alimentar os nossos filhos, a nossa família, a nossa comunidade, as nossas crianças.
So this situation impacts directly their food security. Because of that, they are not able anymore to ensure food to the children, families, and so on.
Alguns anos atrás, a gente conseguia ir para a roça, para os nossos plantios, a partir das 7, 8 horas da manhã, e conseguia pelo menos ficar 1 da tarde, 13 da tarde, 14 da tarde. E hoje em dia a gente não consegue mais ficar todo esse período. A gente acaba ter que sair mais cedo, né? Por exemplo, mais 5 horas da manhã, 6 horas da manhã já tem que estar colocando o pé no caminho da roça, né? Porque a gente não aguenta mais o calor do sol. Então, 10 horas, 9h30, a gente já tem que estar de volta da roça porque o calor está muito intenso.
So, in previous years, the community could go to the field where they have their plantation and agriculture at 7 a.m., about 3 or 3 p.m., but right now, because of the extreme heat, they cannot have the same period of time of work. So they have to wake up earlier at about 5 a.m. to go there. And when it's about 10 a.m., it's already too hot and they have to come back home. So it's also affecting the way that they manage their time.
Se tratando de enchente, as mulheres estão tendo novas estratégias, né, de fazer a observação de onde o rio chega, né, até onde a água chega, para poder ver outra área, um outro território onde possa se construir uma nova roça, um novo plantio, para que elas possam estar salvando essas espécies de plantas que a gente sempre vem cultivando.
So women in those communities, they have the wisdom to observe the river and to check that the river is changing. And now they are moving their fields to other places because they know that the river will be not there in the same place anymore.
Thank you very much. Sheilla, stealing from your research and your work, are these challenges that also apply to a broader scale to other communities?
Hello, good afternoon. Do you hear me? Yeah. Good. Thanks for the invitation first. I'm glad to see you here. Thank you for coming. Look, in Brazil, we have historical problems and vulnerabilities that pre-exist to the climate crisis. We have problems in order to make good adaptation, but it's not enough. Yeah? Adaptation must be transformative in order to really solve the problems that we have. We have a passive from the past of problems that must be confronted now in order to have climate solutions. We indigenous, as Cleosimara said, I'm very happy to see her today. After many years, I met her at Rio Negro. It was a great surprise. As she said, indigenous people suffer more the consequences of climate crisis, in spite of the fact that they didn't contribute to the climate crisis. And it happens in Brazil, we have not only indigenous peoples that live in close relation to nature. We have local communities that have other identities, collective identities, that are people that live by the river, riverines, we call ribeirinhos, babaçu coconut breakers, quebradeiras de coco babaçu. We have a lot of groups and identities that are considered to be local communities and have their knowledge, their specific knowledge that is developed according to the way they live together and close. So they need the nature to keep and maintain their ways of life. And the first demand we realize, and she and Cleosimara said this, indigenous people and local communities demanding that the government guarantees their territories, the title of the lands, because they are in this as a climate policy. This should have been done before. Our constitution, federal constitution, is from 1988, and there it's written that indigenous people have the right of their territories, the territories should not be invaded, they should be consulted of every decision about their territories. And what do we face? That the Constitution is not put in practice in this case. So all the territories of indigenous people should have been already recognized. And as she said, they have 9 in their territory, in the Negro River. But there are others, many others, to be recognized officially, and they should have the title of the demarcation of these lands. So they are demanding as climate policy. And this is something that should have been done, as I said before. Women have additional challenges, as she also said. We have a patriarchal society that overloads women with the tasks of caring. And she said, she mentioned this, They are responsible of taking care of the family, of the health, the sick people. They take care of the crops too, and they are the ones that most suffer the effects of climate change in their bodies and in their territories. Besides this, there is a great challenge, which is the violence. We had the murdering of 2 women of a local community. They are coconut breakers, Babaçu coconut breakers, here in the state of Pará. As I don't know if you know, the movement of the coconut breakers, it's a huge movement in Brazil. And they get together, they are in thousands of women in this movement defending their way of life and their culture that is related to the Babaçu palm tree. They take everything from this palm tree, their economic survival and their cultural survival, and they reproduce this in their territories, but they are being forbidden to have the access to these territories, and they are threatened by the farmers. And unfortunately, last week we had the violence is something that's also really worrying in Brazil. And the violence affects not only environmental defendants, but human rights defendants. Recently, we had the Escazú agreement approved in Brazil. In fact, it was last week. This is an agreement that regards environmental information that we should affirms the right of the environmental information, that it's precise, that it's clear, that it's transparent. But not only that, it also assures or try to guarantee that people who defend the environment are not under violence. They are not threatened by this, especially representatives of the agribusiness in Brazil. I guess I talked too much.
No, not at all. Thank you so
please,
much.
yeah.
Thank you for highlighting what a rights-based approach means, why we need a rights-based approach, and all the threats the communities are facing and this extreme violence. And that when we speak about adaptation, we don't start now, but we have to start with all the context and all the challenges that have been there before. I would now like to turn to Tigist. I hope you can hear us well. Tigist, Africa has the greatest adaptation needs, but at the same time, the least access to adaptation finance. And Ethiopia is among the most underfunded countries according to the Adaptation Finance Index. What adaptation strategies are communities using to adapt in Ethiopia, and what role do women play in these?
especially as a country being highly impacted by climate change. Ethiopia is one of the countries experiencing the impact of climate change at a very high scale, with erratic rainfalls, prolonged and repeated droughts, flash floods, and landslides, all of which would disrupt food systems, water access, and livelihoods. Yet across regions, communities are trying their best to cope with these challenges. They are actively adapting
Yeah,
and small-scale irrigation, and women play a critical, though often a resource-constrained role, particularly in implementing farm-level strategies and maintaining household food security. When we come to the key adaptation strategies, Ethiopian communities utilize various strategies, often combining the indigenous practices with support from government and non-government programs. We have crop and livelihood diversification, where farmers mitigate risk by planting different crop varieties, like early maturing drought-tolerant types or intercropping to ensure at least one harvest in the unpredictable weather sustains. Many also diversify their income through off-farm activities like handicrafts, honey production, poultry, and weaving to reduce dependence solely on climate-sensitive agriculture. Another aspect is the adjusting the farming practices, where the adaptation methods include changing planting dates to align with shifting rainfall patterns and using traditional weather forecasting to implement these mechanisms. The soil and water conservation methods, they are widely adopted strategy involving physical measures like terracing, check dams, and stone bands, as well as biological measures like tree planting, agroforestry, and natural regeneration of vegetation. These efforts aim to reduce soil erosion, conserve moisture, restore vegetation, rehabilitate degraded land, and protect biodiversity, strengthening the land's capacity to absorb climate shocks. Also, when we come to water management, there are building small-scale irrigation systems, digging wells, and also rainwater harvesting, and implementing water storage techniques to secure water supply during the dry periods. This stabilizes the water availability for households and livestock and smallholder crops during long dry periods, especially in the lowland areas where the pastorals are. These mechanisms improve the water infrastructure to help reduce also conflict and competition over the scarce resources. With the livestock management, especially with the pastoralist communities, they use traditional rangeland management and preserve fodder for their livestock during feed shortages, often rearing indigenous breeds known for their adaptive traits. And to reduce reliance on one climate-sensitive source of income,
Tigist,
households
thank you so
are
much. Thank you so much, but the connection is very slow. I think we got the idea. Thank you so much. But we have trouble with the techniques. I will come back to you. Maybe then it is better. But I would thank you. I would now like to move to Natascha Beinker. Germany has committed to locally led and gender just adaptation. Where do you see this is already translating into real support for indigenous and women and the challenges they're facing, which we heard a lot about? And where do gaps remain you also want to address now?
Is this on? Yeah?
Yeah, speak up.
Yeah, I also want to wish you all a good afternoon and thank you very much for the invitation to this panel. I'm really honored to be here. And let me start by repeating what has been said, but I think it cannot be said often enough. We all know that climate change affects everyone, but not everyone equally, like we have heard, especially vulnerable groups like indigenous people, women who have fewer resources to begin with, and opportunities to protect themselves from extreme weather events and slow onset processes and to adapt to climate change. So I think climate impacts and disasters, they amplify existing inequalities and exposing women and girls even to more risks and also, as we have heard, to increase gender-based violence. But we also see, on the other hand, that women and indigenous peoples are not only victims of climate change, which has been said before, I think, by you, Martina, but they are also agents of change, and they are key providers of knowledge for equitable climate solutions. And so we believe the inclusion of traditional knowledge in climate adaptation is essential. So this is why we believe, and you've asked this question, that women and indigenous people must be fully, equally, and meaningfully involved in decision-making processes, including ensuring that they have access to climate finance. This is why we, as the German government, are committed to gender-responsive and locally led climate adaptation in line with our feminist approach to development policy, aiming at uncovering the roots of injustice and inequality and breaking down existing power relations, like you, Sheilla, have also explained very well. And those are not just empty words, because our commitment is already translating in real-world impacts and projects. Since we are here in Brazil, I would like to name just one of many examples of the bilateral portfolio we have, the German government working together with you in Brazil. Germany supports, for example, the Association of Indigenous Women Warriors of Ancestry, and MEGER. This is a network of indigenous women from all biomes in Brazil. And MEGER is mapping projects on territorial protection and sustainable productive activities led by indigenous women that intrinsically use their traditional knowledge on biodiversity and seeds to adapt production to change. And I strongly believe we have to do more and support more initiatives like this, not only in Brazil, but all over the world, and scale these up. I would like to say at this point that we remain a reliable partner in doing so, despite the growing challenges we are all collectively facing in the world of climate change. We hope that the global goal on adaptation provides a shared vision to strengthen resilience worldwide, and we hope that COP30 can translate this vision into practical implementation and table outcomes that connect global ambition with local realities. Maybe I stop at this point.
Thank you so much. Yeah, you already mentioned it. Adaptation finance falls short of needs. We have a situation of declining ODA, also from Germany. And at the same time, the funds are struggle to reach those most affected. So first, there isn't enough money. There's a huge gap. And second, it's not reaching the most vulnerable. How can we close this gap?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Maybe I start from what we have adopted at the last COP. I think you just mentioned it's a little bit difficult to hear actually what you were saying. The adoption of the new collective quantified goal on climate finance. We believe that now that we have this goal, it's time to deliver, and we have to mobilize all sources of finance, public and private, to improve access, especially for vulnerable groups. And we believe that the NCQG decision contains all necessary elements to dramatically increase adaptation finance and improve also the access to it. So we think that mobilizing these investments need our dedication to create bankable concepts and to ensure long-term commitments from public and private investors, in addition to grant support, for example, for the national adaptation plans. As I have said, now it's time to deliver and ensure that those funds also reach the most vulnerable groups of people, including women, indigenous people, and local communities. I have mentioned one example from our bilateral portfolio in Brazil, but we are also working with multilateral funds in this regard. Just a few days ago, on the 6th of November, during the World Leaders Summit here in Bealem, the 1.8 billion COP30 indigenous people, local communities, and Afro-descendants communities, forest and land tenure pledge was endorsed by 39 donors. at the Forest Danger Funders Group. We have been part of this group since the beginning at COP26 in Glasgow. And we are currently co-chairing the group, and next year we will chair the group, and we believe this is a great privilege. So our joint new pledge at this COP is for us not just a financial commitment. We believe it also provides a collaborative space to listen, learn, and link our ambition. And this includes also the ambition to increase direct access to financing in the next period of the pledge until 2030. The initial pledge from COP26 has supported different approaches to increase direct funding that reaches communities through indigenous and local territorial funds and other fit-for-purpose funding mechanisms that partner with indigenous people and local communities. So there are several funds that receive direct support from FTFG. I don't want to name them all, but we remain committed to increasing direct long-term and flexible financing to ensure that communities have the decision-making power, like you all have said, over how the funds are used. So we will work with partner organizations to align our efforts with our pledge and the principle of free, prior, and informed consent.
Thank you. As we are already approaching the end of our event, I have one question to every panelist. If you could choose one key lever for effective and inclusive adaptation, one policy, one measure, whether it's adopted here at COP or more on the national or subnational level, what would you choose? And I would like to start with Klesimara. Or Sheilla, you want to start and give Klesimara a second to think about the question?
The same question. Yeah, we have the opportunity to review the gender adaptation plan now at this COP. I would recommend that the country, Brazil, that first, after we review, we have the document with the contributions of the women that have been very active in this discussion, especially in Latin America, including the defendants in the gap, the defendants of the women that are in the territories against violence and threats, and also including recognizing that they are not only victims, but they are part of the solutions in the territories, not only indigenous people, but in the Afro-descendants people that are Afro-descendant women that are for the first time mentioned in the gap in this document. This was success from the struggle of the social movements and NGOs in Brazil to that it's included in the gap. So I would recommend that the gap is made concrete in the reality of the groups and of the people.
Thank you very much. Klesimara, you want to follow up on that?
Bom, eu recomendaria para os governos, tanto alemão quanto brasileiro, né, e outros governos também, que a nossa garantia de vida, não só para nós povos indígenas, mas para os não indígenas também, a demarcação das terras, porque através da demarcação da terra a gente garante a nossa sustentabilidade, a nossa subsistência, a nossa sobrevivência, na qual hoje a gente traz uma temática muito forte, onde a gente diz a resposta somos nós, não é somente para nós indígenas, mas para cada pessoa, cada cidadão no mundo também trazer essa responsabilidade. O que cada um está fazendo para, vamos dizer assim, para minimizar a mudança climática no mundo. Então, esse chamado não é somente para os povos indígenas, mas para todos os povos que existem na humanidade, porque se a gente não chegar, vamos dizer assim, a um acordo, a uma sensibilização, a gente vai continuar sendo afetados, não só os que estão nas cidades, mas nós também que estamos dentro dos territórios. Como eu disse agora há pouco, a gente está sofrendo impacto bastante diariamente, por mais que a gente seja os maiores protetores da natureza, a gente sente esse impacto, assim como vocês também sentem esse impacto nas cidades, em outros locais, a gente também sente esse impacto. Então, a resposta somos nós, não é somente para nós, povos indígenas, mas para cada um se sensibilizar e se perguntar e responder ao mesmo tempo. O que eu estou fazendo para combater as mudanças climáticas? O que eu estou fazendo para enfrentar as mudanças climáticas para presentes e futuras gerações? Acho que é isso.
So, her recommendation.
It's on.
Is working? Yes. Her recommendation for the Brazilian government, but also for the German government and different governments, it's about land tenure. So protecting indigenous land is an important measure for facing climate change, because through protecting their land, they can ensure their sustainability of their communities. And also, she's claiming every one of us to think about, if we are saying that we are the answer, we are the solutions, what are we doing to have real solutions to face climate change? In their case, it's protecting their land.
Thank you so much. Coming to you, Tigist, please speak up. What's one key lever, one key measure you would like to adopt?
Thank you so much. I think it all comes down to having gender-sensitive, gender-responsive climate finance and adaptation finance that can be cascaded down to the community level. Also, inclusion in decision-making processes. Women needs to be at the table. Their representation should go beyond tokenism. And also there needs to be we need to address the socio-economic, also cultural barriers that are there with the focus with the systemic factors. Also integrating the indigenous knowledge. And also my co-panelists have mentioned access to the resources, especially when it comes to land. That's, I think, a common agenda across the globe. So for me, I would activate gender-responsive community financing that places women and youth-led initiatives at the center of planning and decision-making to ensure adaptation is effective, owned, and result-oriented, where climate impacts are felt the most.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. I have the feeling I'm more or less echoing what has been said, because I would also even strengthen bottom-led, country-led, and locally-led approaches that empower communities to design and lead and own adaptation solutions. And what I would really wish for, since public funds are limited, that we are all together creatively thinking about how we can involve also the private sector responsibly to support that approach. I know that is very difficult and sometimes dangerous, but I think this is really important, and I don't have an answer to that, but I can make a wish, right? And I think this is my wish.
I think we as a civil society would have some suggestions to include the private sector, but not voluntarily, but to include them and make them pay also as polluters. We will come back to that. Thank you so much to all of our panelists for all your insights, your experiences. We have heard that adaptation is less a technical question, it's a political question, it's a question of rights, of putting people, especially women, in the center of decision making, not only seeing them as a victim. We also heard about our wishes for finance, for reaching those communities most affected. Also very happy to hear that the German government is still on board on that and wants to improve that. We will, as German civil society, also keep up on that. Thank you so much for joining us here in Bealem and also online. I wish you all a successful conference, whether it's here in the Blue Zone or at one of the many, many wonderful events happening all around the city of Bealem. Thank you so much.
Global Multidão, realizing just transitions. Welcome to the German Climate Pavilion at COP30 in Bealem.